Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Film Forum at Home. My name is Joseph Berger. I'm the Theater Operations and Events Manager at Film Forum, an independent, not-for-profit, four-screen cinema in Manhattan's West Village. I'm speaking to you all live from my office on West Houston Street. This is yet another virtual event we are hosting while the theater is temporarily closed. So first and foremost, we wish you all health and happiness at this time. I'm delighted to host today's discussion on My Rembrandt, a new documentary by Oeke Hoogendijk. My Rembrandt is both a deep dive into the rarefied world of private Rembrandt collectors and a fascinating account of behind-the-scenes art world intrigue around the sale of two important Rembrandts and the possible discovery of another two. My Rembrandt is now available to rent on our virtual cinema platform at filmforum.org. I'm very pleased to welcome our guest moderator today, Adam Eaker. Adam is the Assistant Curator of European Paintings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Adam is a specialist in Northern European and British painting of the 16th through 18th centuries. And he previously served as guest curator at the Frick Collection, where he co-curated the exhibition Van Dyck, The Anatomy of Portraiture in 2016. He also organized the exhibition In Praise of Painting, Dutch Masterpieces at the Met, which is currently on view. Hi, Adam, how are you?
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I can't think of anyone better to have today, so we're really happy to have you, and we thank you.
My pleasure.
Our special guest today is the director of My Rembrandt, Oeke Hoogendijk. Oeke is an internationally acclaimed filmmaker specializing in documentaries about art. Over a period of 10 years, Oeke followed the large-scale renovation and reorganization of the world-famous Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, which became a 4-episode television series and a feature-length film entitled The New Rijksmuseum, which Film Forum theatrically premiered in 2013. The New Rijksmuseum received a number of awards, including the Golden Calf at the Netherlands Film Festival, the Prix d'Italia, and Best Dutch Documentary at the International Documentary Festival of Amsterdam. Welcome, Oeke. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Congratulations on another wonderful film. We're really pleased to premiere it here in the US.
Well, I'm very happy that you are doing that, especially in these terrible, complicated times. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. Adam, I'm going to let you take it away, and I'll see you in about 45 minutes. Have a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Oeke, congratulations. The movie is so beautiful and compelling. Particularly for me as someone who works in the museum world, the art world, knows a number of the people you profiled. I thought you captured that world so beautifully and had so many insights and told some really fascinating stories. I wanted to start our conversation by asking you simply how you came to this topic of Rembrandt and particularly Rembrandt ownership or Rembrandt possession and obsession. So could you talk a little bit about how the project started and how long it took to actually make the film?
Yeah, well, that's another short story. I'll try to do the short version. I was actually, I filmed such a long time in the Rijksmuseum, 10 years, to make a film on the renovation of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And then I was finally leaving and packing my bags after 10 years. And then I noticed that there was some secret going on. People were very mystical about something. And then it appeared that those two paintings of Baron the Rothschild were going to come on for sale. So that was the moment that I was actually leaving and thinking, I'm not sure whether this is the right moment to leave. So then I got very excited about what was happening, and I knew that was going to be a very exciting story. That was one part. At the same time, I met the Jan Six family, the Six family. And when I met the young Jan Six, and he told me, he described himself as a Rembrandt detective. And I was trying to find out what that meant. And then I found out that he was all the time hunting to find undiscovered Rembrandt paintings. And that really meant that he Like he was all the time serving on the net to all kind of auctions, small auctions, to find a painting that wasn't noticed, that what he could discover. And then when I met him, and he already discovered one Rembrandt painting that was being restorated at that time, and he was sure he was going to find more. So I thought, let's try to make a film not specifically on Rembrandt, because we have so many films. I mean, it's our most famous painter. And there's, I mean, not only in Holland, also in the UK, everywhere there's so many films made on Rembrandt. But I wanted to take another angle, and that is the private collection, the people that have a Rembrandt in their home, or are trying to get a Rembrandt, or trying to sell a Rembrandt. So I thought that kind of that world that's very small and very exclusive, old master world would be. I was really curious to know more about it, and I thought that would be a film. That's how it started.
Thank you. And I think a lot of people share that curiosity that you have. And one thing that struck me, I know when the Met is preparing to spend millions of dollars on a painting, we are also very secretive about it and very much value confidentiality. And I know that you had 10 years worth of relationships from your documentary on the Rijksmuseum, but I was still so curious about the access that you were able to achieve to this rarefied world of very private, very powerful and wealthy individuals. Were those relationships primarily brokered through the Rijksmuseum, or did you have other networks that you drew upon? How did you get yourself in the room at
That's
the
a good question.
moments?
Yeah, I know what you mean, because it's not easy to make an appointment with, for example, Baron Rothschild. He's very privative. He doesn't like journalists. I'm not a journalist, a filmmaker, but well, I was lucky that Taco Dibbits, the director of the Rijksmuseum, he wanted to help me because he believed very strongly that it was a great idea. So I wrote the letter and he signed it, and we sent it to all of the people that I thought I should meet to do my research. And then, well, of course, not everything works. I mean, for example, we know that the Queen of England has two beautiful Rembrandts, but I couldn't get into that. I mean, I could film there, but then I would have a curator speaking to me and not the Queen herself. So I thought that wouldn't be a good idea. But then there were a lot of people left, and then, I mean, there was also this personal click when I met, for example, the Duke of Buccleuch, who has this marvelous, amazing Rembrandt painting of the old woman reading. There was somehow a very good vibration. I felt that he would be very important for the film, and he was really motivated to be in the film. So, and also the Baron Rothschild was, I mean, he didn't let me into everything, but I was in his bedroom to see the place where the Martin and Opium were hanging, the two paintings that he wanted to sell. So yes, I had very, very good access. I'm very happy that. I mean, if I wouldn't have had that access, I don't know, this film wouldn't be half as good. I mean, it was great.
And those were some of my favorite scenes in the film, when you show what these paintings look like in a domestic context. Obviously a very grand domestic context, but still the fact that these are works of art that people live with is pretty mind-blowing, I think. When you work as a documentarian, do you bring your camera with you to the first meeting? Are you filming from the get-go, or do you build relationships off camera first?
Oh, I could never come right away with a camera. That would be a no-go. So I've met the Duke of Buccleuch. I first write a lot of mails, and then he answered, and then we call, and then I went there all by myself to Scotland, where he lives in his castle. And I really invest a lot of time before I start coming up with a crew, because I believe that's part of the work. I think it's most important thing is that they feel comfortable with me, and there's just one way, and that's making a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still, actually, it's funny to say, but I'm still having a friendship with him, and I saw him afterwards when he was in Amsterdam once, and no, it's really goes deep to the way I want to film. There's no way in just showing up with a camera and then leaving and that's it. That's more a reportage, which I don't make.
And I think that intimacy, those friendships and relationships that you built are really palpable in the film. I'm curious that you've been in touch with the Duke since the film came out, but did you have any negative reactions from anyone featured in the film once they saw the finished product?
Actually, not really. I mean, there was some complications. Some complications with, for instance, there's this huge quarrel between Jan Six, the young Jan Six, and his colleague art dealer. And the colleague art dealer wasn't happy with the film. Of course, he wasn't in the film, so I can imagine. But I didn't want to put him in and have that sort of who's right or who's wrong. I wasn't interested in that part of the story, and that would have made it a hugely different film, and I just didn't want to make that film. So for him, it might have been a bit difficult that he didn't get the chance to give his version of the trouble they got together. But apart from that, I must say that everybody was very pleased, and I had a very, very good response from the main characters of the film.
Great. I'm struck by the fact that you're someone who's really fascinated by not just art, but the art world as a set of institutions and protagonists and events also. So you film things like a museum opening or a press conference. And I think you have an almost anthropological eye for the rituals of the art world. I wonder, do you consider yourself to be a part of that world, or are you approaching it as an ethnographer, as an outsider?
Ooh, wow, that's a difficult question. I think the best I can do is stay an outsider, because I don't have any, for me personally, I don't sell Rembrandts. I don't have one on my wall. I'm really a filmmaker. And I really thought it was important to stay a little bit outside of the world, because then you have a more clear vision. But of course, every opening in the Rijksmuseum, I'm there, and I know everybody. And but I should always be a bit there, but I'm a bit hidden. I'm not. It shouldn't be good to be in front to show too much. No, that's not my role, I think.
Yeah, in English we have this expression, to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, we have the same.
Yeah.
It's the same expression, and that's when you make. In my personal view, you make the best films when you stay a bit, on the side. Yes,
I think that makes sense. I wanted to ask. I think, as you said, you don't own any Rembrandts yourself, but do you identify with the psychology, the mentality of the collector, or was that something you intentionally set out to explore when you began this project?
Well, that depends how you look upon that, because, my film is actually, I think, about obsession. I'm trying to get as close as I can to the obsession of the art collectors, the private owners. And everybody knows this feeling, I believe, that, and I know it too, that you, for instance, you want to have something deeply, badly, or you're very obsessed with something. I have it with my films. I'm very obsessed with my films. So it's not difficult for me to really feel that connection to them, because I can imagine also the young Jan Six. He wants to make. He wants to discover new paintings. He wants to show himself. He wants to. I mean, I think everybody knows the feeling. So I think it's not only possible to feel that when you have actually a Rembrandt or something like that. I mean, it could be a car, it could be a film, it could be anything.
And I think the dynamic that you captured between the younger Jan Six and his father also was a very human dynamic between a father and son that many people can relate to, not just Rembrandt owners and dealers.
Yes, I was very, I really wanted to have that part in the film, because I thought it was very important to see their interaction. And I love the fact that Jan Six, he's telling about how Rembrandt dealt with his son. So he's also making it more universal with this story about Rembrandt and Titus. But I thought, I could have dived deeper into that story. I would have loved to, because I thought there was a lot of psychological things that were hugely interesting. But I had to stick to my subject, so I couldn't do that. But it's in the film, and that's good.
Yeah. You remarked already that there are a ton of films about Rembrandt, and this really isn't a film about him, but about the obsession with him. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your personal relationship to Rembrandt. Obviously, growing up in the Netherlands, you can't escape him. But was he a favorite artist for you? Has your relationship to him evolved over the course of this project?
It's difficult to explain, because in Holland, and you might, I don't know if you can connect to this, but for us, Rembrandt, in the beginning, when you grow up, it's homework.
Mm-hmm.
Which you go to school, everybody knows it. Rembrandt, it's like Anne Frank, for example. Yeah. These are our major stories in Holland. So you begin to think, okay, well, he's a big painter. Well, okay. But then later on, I was actually pretty late, I think. There was an exhibition in Holland in the Rijksmuseum called The Late Rembrandts.
Mm-hmm.
And since I was stayed for 10 years in the Rijksmuseum, of course, I saw many paintings of Rembrandt, which I liked a lot. But when I was at this exhibition where there were many paintings of Rembrandt from his late periods, and I will never forget the moment that I was there. I was all by myself, because I could come in with a curator, because I have my contacts there. And then it was a moment that I really got very emotional. And it's difficult to explain, but it's the way that Rembrandt is painting that, like, for instance, his self-portraits. And there's one self-portrait that he painted just before he died. And we all know that he lost his wife, who died. He lost his son, who died. He went bankrupt. And the way that Rembrandt is showing his face in this particular painting, and it is without any, I mean, he really shows that he's a broken man. Mm-hmm. And that's for us, and for me personally also, what makes Rembrandt such a amazing painter, that he's not flattering people, not himself. He's not showing people that are posing only. He's really trying to capture that soul into a person. And that's the soul of Rembrandt that we feel when he painted himself at this moment, that he obviously went through a very difficult time. And I think that's what about Rembrandt. And then there's, of course, his the way his techniques are, and the light, and there's everything else. But I think what is really moving me personally is the how close you can get to him by his painting, how close you can get to his objects. Like, for instance, The Old Woman Reading, which is my favorite, Rembrandt. Mm-hmm. And it's a serenity, and the way she's looking at the book she's reading, and you feel so close to this woman that, I mean, it's more than a photo. It's amazing. So it really changes when I was for instance, at the castle of the Duke, and I had to go to the breakfast room, I was always passing by the old woman reading. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it was really moving. Yes.
And I love what the Duke says in the film about her being the strongest living presence in the whole house, right. Really capturing that spirit or soul or whatever we want to call it that seems to be present in the painting. I think the honesty, the unvarnished quality of these pictures contributes to an experience that I had, which is it's almost a bit unsettling to see these very raw paintings of ordinary, humble individuals within these opulent castles and Parisian mansions. There was a bit of a disjunction there, I thought. And I'm thinking of a diplomatic way to ask this question, but do you see your project as containing an element of social critique of the culture of ownership and collecting and artistic trophies?
I'm not sure whether I really get the question. So you mean, can you phrase it again? So
I guess what I would say is that I think there are people who would say Rembrandts don't belong in a private home, period.
Oh, yes. I understand what you mean. No, but I've heard that many times, and I think it's rubbish because, honestly speaking, people tend to forget that in the old days, paintings always were in people's homes. Mm-hmm. That was normal. And museums, we only have for a short time that paintings are now to be seen in museums. But before that, there were no museums. So, like, for instance, it's funny that Baron de Rothschild, his paintings, Martin and Opium, they were covered with nicotine because his parents used to smoke. And they were hanging in the. Now I know that's cursing in the United States because I know you hate smoking, but it's interesting. And also the restaurator said that nicotine is perfect for painting, and also dust, because when you take it away, okay, you have it's black, but when you take it away, it's still there. I mean, it doesn't really. It's not hurting the painting. So, no, I think I can imagine the feeling that you think, why are they so privileged that they have a Rembrandt in their own house? But then I think that's the way it used to be. And I also know that the Duke of Buccleuch, it's not in my film, but he opens up the castle a couple of months normally when there's no Corona, COVID thing going on in the summertime. And people are allowed to visit and see all the art in his castle. So it's not that black and white, I tend to say.
Well, and of course, I know that the collectors you feature are very generous lenders to museums as well. And I think you really captured that symbiosis between the museum world and the world of collectors and dealers. One other question that I had for you, I thought you filmed the paintings very beautifully, and I really appreciated the slow shots, particularly in the opening of the film, both of landscape, but then shifting into the surface of the picture itself. And could you talk about some of the challenges or lessons from filming these static two-dimensional works of art?
Well, this is I really have to tell that my cameraman Sander Snoep and Gregor Meerman, I have two cameramans, they are absolutely fantastic. And we use them special lenses to get, and it's amazing because we really got this close to the painting. I mean, it's like you're almost touching the paint. Those are the moments that I am very nervous because I do have an assurance, but I don't want them to mess things up. But it's really a technique as well to get. And the funny thing about it is that's really strange is that when I saw the footage we had from the old woman reading, but then later on the painting was in the Rijksmuseum on loan, and then it's so funny, but you can't get that close to the painting. So it's funny to see that. Even with a camera like we have now, the huge techniques and the wonderful lenses that, in my point of view, you never get closer than taking a camera. Then with your eyes, you cannot really get that close. So yeah, that was really important to find that way to really getting that feel for the painting.
Yeah, and I felt that you really captured that intimacy beautifully of getting to pore over a surface, of even holding a painting in your hands, that very rare privilege that some of us have. People will anachronistically sometimes describe Rembrandt as a cinematic painter because of these dramatic effects of light and dark, and also, of course, the drama of the gestures, the tableau that he creates. And I wonder if you consciously or unconsciously maybe even adopted a kind of Rembrandt-esque visual language as you made the film.
That's a nice question. I've never had that one before. It's nice. I think it's different than what you might think. But for instance, like the Night Watch, the most famous painting of Rembrandt, there he's doing something very special. He's normally they captured the people on the painting when they were posing. What Rembrandt does with the Night Watch is that he sort of clicks before they are posing. So that's why you see that it's a big mess. Everybody's still looking where I'm going to stand. What is it? You know, and that's a secret that Rembrandt already knew in those days, and that I'm doing as well. It's that your camera should be on also before the action starts, like Rembrandt did. So, for instance, there's a funny moment that the waiter of the servant of Baron de Rothschild is coming in with the glasses of wine. I mean, normally you wouldn't film that, but
right. I love that moment, though.
Yeah, me too. But you know, it's where you think, okay, this you shouldn't film, but let's put the camera on because it's going to be fun. And I think it was, because, and the dog and the things that you, and that's also what Rembrandt does. He films the dogs, like it's on a Night Watch, also a dog that is. So it's just not doing the cliche, not doing what you should normally do, but trying to find other angles.
Yes, and I think that we all try to put our best face forward and get the best angle, present ourselves in the best light. And I think you did a very good job while maintaining that collaboration or that friendship and intimacy with your subjects, of also sometimes piercing through that veil of formal self-presentation.
Yeah, that was my main goal with this film, was to get as close as I could to the real person, to what's in the person, what really moves the person, what makes it tick. And I hope indeed that we succeeded in doing that. But I must say it was really a fun project, because we had so many nice characters in the film that I've never done a film that made me so happy as this film, because it was really a pleasure going to the Duke of Buccleuch or to the Baron de Rothschild, because I mean you enter a world that you don't know of, and it's a very it's going back in time also a bit. Huh? It's I think it's still, and with the Duke of Buccleuch, the castle is still like it used to be. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, those scenes were amazing. I would like to remind those tuning in by Zoom that you can submit questions through our Q&A feature. I see we have one, which I assume is aimed for me. Why is the Met's self-portrait in a decorative French frame as opposed to a dark Dutch frame? So not really a question about the film, but one that I'm happy to answer.
You can go ahead and answer it.
I mean, I think it connects to the themes of the film, which are that paintings have biographies. They're not pristine, preserved in amber from the moment they left Rembrandt's studio. And part of that biography, the context of display, is the frame. So hardly any paintings from the 17th century are still in their original frames. There were many fashions already by the end of the 17th century, Dutch collectors were swapping out those dark, older frames for gilt French frames, and that is a process that has continued. So our philosophy of frames at the Met is we're not trying to create the look of the picture the moment it was painted. We want to preserve the history of its ownership. So it might have a beautiful French frame from an important 18th century collection, and if it looks good in that frame, we'll keep it on. But we're not historical purists in the sense of display. And again, I think that was something that I loved in your film, Oeke, this sense of context and history, that these paintings live in real environments where there are dogs, there are glasses of wine, there's a lit fireplace. And it really brought those paintings to life for me in a way.
Yes. Nice.
And we have another question. I expected to disapprove of collectors who have Rembrandts in their home, but I was extremely drawn to the Duke and to Baron Rothschild, more so than Mr. Kaplan, even though he shares all his paintings with the public. Does that correspond at all to your own reactions or to the point or of view of the film, if it has one?
I can imagine, but that's a very personal view, I think, whether you like Thomas Kaplan or not, or the way that he is dealing with his art. But of course, I think that there's a difference because I think it's always for a filmmaker very important how close people will let you in.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for instance, the Duke of Buccleuch, I think we went there for 4 times, filming each time again, having dinner with him, staying in the castle overnight, having breakfast, talking with him. So we get a very personal relationship. And I think that's why he is so, I mean, of course, he's a very amazing person, but he's also very open in the film. And he really loved us to be there and to witness because the film is about that he wants to move the painting to another room, and he has a lot of feelings about that because there's been a theft in the castle, and he for him, for instance, he didn't want to touch the painting. In the beginning, he said that the people that were carrying the painting, when it was out of his frame, they should wear gloves. But in the end, he was walking. You've seen it. He was walking with the painting, and that was some kind of therapy for him. Because before he was so scared of touching it, and then finally he was walking around with the painting in his hands because of Taco Dibbits, who showed him that he could do that. And I think those personal moments with the characters that made them, whether you like them or not, he was so personal that it's hard not to like the Duke, I think.
Yeah, I think that charm really came across in the film in a wonderful way. I want to think a little bit more. We talked about what it was like for you growing up in the Netherlands, where Rembrandt is so canonical that he feels like homework, as you said. But I want to talk more about cultural politics. One of the main storylines in your film is the acquisition of Martin and Opian from the Rothschild collection, and how that became kind of almost a diplomatic quarrel between France and the Netherlands. Why do you think that the Dutch government is still so invested in this painter from the 17th century, in ownership of the painter? There are many, many Rembrandts in the Netherlands. What is it that causes 80 million euros of government funds to be allocated for this purchase, and probably more, I think? They would have been willing to go higher if they could have gotten the export license. Right.
Well, I think that's Rembrandt is our identity. I mean, every country has its important figures, and I think for us, Rembrandt is it's our best painter. I mean, Vermeer also, but Rembrandt painted a lot of more paintings. And I think that the whole, I don't know if you know, maybe you know, but maybe not everyone, that the whole Rijksmuseum was built around the night watch.
Mm-hmm.
So this shows how important he was to the Netherlands. And I think that, of course, every culture is so important. I mean, if you want to show who you are as a people, as a country, you tend to show your best artist and say, hey, that's us. And then, of course, we must admit that we had many good painters in the 17th century. But later on, we had some, but we didn't have, it was never the same. We had the golden age in the 17th century. That was when Holland was rich and everything. We had a lot of artists, we had a lot of paintings. But after that, it's never been that big again. So maybe that's also why Rembrandt is still our icon, our best painter in Holland.
Yeah, I think that connection to a specific moment in history of national pride, even if that pride is being increasingly called into question, I think that's a big part of his status. And I've been interested, as someone who works with Dutch paintings in the United States, to see that Vermeer has, to a certain extent, eclipsed Rembrandt for the American audience, I find. Certainly when I talk to our PR department at the museum, it's always, you want a Vermeer on the poster. Yeah. Rembrandt doesn't quite cut it anymore. And I wonder, I don't know if that has to do particularly with the success of novels and films about Vermeer, that he has come to occupy a slightly larger position in the public imagination than Rembrandt does. I think there's also a particular appeal to Vermeer's depiction of women and women's lives, although, of course, Rembrandt was a wonderful painter of women as well. But it's interesting to me that Rembrandt remains really the poster boy, so to speak, of the Rijksmuseum and of the Netherlands, where Vermeer is more on the rise here.
Okay, I didn't know that. So he's more popular in the States, Vermeer?
I think so, and I certainly encounter more tourists at the museum who say, I've come here to see the Vermeers.
Okay.
We hear that a lot. I think in a way, Vermeer is more manageable. You know, there are people argue, but let's say there are roughly 34 paintings by Vermeer that survive. You can see all the Vermeers in the world, and some people do. They make these pilgrimages. And I find, even as a scholar of this material, Rembrandt is really, really hard to wrap your head around. There's so much. There are so many paintings and drawings and prints. And then, of course, we have all the attribution issues, which your film gets into a little.
Yeah, that's really a complicated issue, because there's I think it's a huge difference between Rembrandt and Vermeer, that Rembrandt had so many more pupils,
mm-hmm.
and you learn by imitating. And he was working in his atelier with his pupils, and I mean, we don't know. Maybe he asked them to fill in certain parts of the painting, or there's a lot of discussion going on, and there's a lot of questions about, because we don't know, we weren't there, we didn't see it. So, and that's the difference with Vermeer, because Vermeer, I don't think it's an issue with Vermeer, is it?
Yeah, there are a few problematic pictures. People have different arguments. The corpus might grow by one painting, or one might get subtracted depending on the scholar, but it's nowhere to the extent that you have with Rembrandt. And I wondered, because part of what you're talking about is this process of attempting to authenticate portraits that Jan Six, the dealer, goes through, attempting to authenticate paintings. Did you find yourself personally invested? Did you want the painting to be authentic? Were you fascinated by that question yourself and trying to answer it for yourself, whether this was a real Rembrandt?
Of course. I mean, of course. It was so exciting when, I mean, it was also a huge media hype in here in Holland, that the moment that Jan Six came out with his painting, he was in every talk show. It was on every front of the newspapers. A new Rembrandt has been discovered. So, of course, I was also very excited, and especially because in the first moment, the expert Ernst van de Wetering, he doesn't see it as Rembrandt. He's not convinced. So that was a very exciting time in it. I even had some sleepless night about it because it was so exciting to, is it or isn't it? And although I think in fact you never really know it. Even now I think it's hard to tell. There are many different views on this topic.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most poignant sub-narratives of the film is that relationship between Jan Six, the dealer, and Ernst van de Wetering, the very senior, esteemed Rembrandt scholar and authenticator, who's someone who, as he says in the film, he doesn't want to hear about money, he doesn't want to hear about the art market, but gets embroiled controversially in these art market questions. And you show in two scenes this evolution from him being very skeptical of the portrait to ultimately authenticating it. And then subsequently there's the fallout, the rupture between the two men. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that evolution in his thought about the portrait. Were there stages that got left out? Did you want that to be a sort of more impressionistic depiction of his thinking?
Yes, well, now we're getting into the part of the film that was, for me, the most difficult part, because there was so much happening, and there was the moment. This was the moment that they sometimes didn't want me with the camera being there, because it was really a matter of life and death. I mean, it was yes or no, and if it was yes, this would mean that, I mean, then it would be a Rembrandt. Then there would be millions of dollars involved. That would be a totally different story. So this is where we really try to capture the story, but we couldn't always be, and didn't always want to be, because it was a kind of a very, very delicate process what happened there. And but of course, we were all very happy when Ernst van de Wetering changed his mind, and he explains in the film why suddenly he thinks, yes, this is a Rembrandt. He does explain it in the film. Mm-hmm. But it was quite, we didn't expect it.
Yeah, and I can imagine that would be, on the one hand, it's a kind of godsend if you were telling a story to suddenly have a very dramatic turn of events that no one could have anticipated. But also, I imagine there's a fear then of it becoming a completely different project, and maybe a more sensational project than you would be interested in making.
Yes. On the other hand, I when I started, I said I want to make a epic art thriller. I was hoping to make a film that was not just talking heads and people telling about Rembrandt, but really action. So this was because we knew that Jan Six would certainly do some exciting things. That I mean, in that content, I wasn't surprised that he indeed founded a second Rembrandt. So I was very happy as a filmmaker. It's always good when things like that getting it more. There were more intrigues, and it was exciting.
Well, I think it's a testament to your good instincts for a story and a subject. We have time for just one more question, and there's one further question from the audience, which I don't know the answer to, but maybe you do. Where are the two Rembrandts now discovered by Jan Six?
I did expect that question. Actually, I know that the one Rembrandt is still being restored. You know, the one with Christ in it and the children. That one is still they're finishing now the restoration. And the other one is very mystical, but I think it isn't sold yet. And I'm afraid that when there's, like you can see in the film, this quarrel about the painting that it will be very difficult to sell it, because whenever you look at the internet, Google, you see that there's something wrong with it, and there's a conflict. So it might take some time for that to all the dust go down, and then he might sell it. I don't know, but it hasn't been sold yet.
Good to know. I think we will wrap up now, but thank you so much, Oeke. You've been really generous with your time and your insights. And again, it's a wonderful film, so I really encourage anyone who hasn't watched it yet to do so. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and also the Film Forum for having the film and having this conversation.
It's been our pleasure, Oeke. Thank you very much, and thank you, Adam. I had one just kind of quick wrap up question for both of you. Adam, I wanted to ask you the same question you asked Oeke earlier. I'm curious to know a little bit about the relationship you've had with Rembrandt in your work and career, and maybe more broadly, the relationship that the Met has with Rembrandt versus Vermeer, let's say.
Sure. Well, I came to Rembrandt, I guess, at an oblique angle because I wrote my dissertation on the 17th century Flemish portraitist Anthony van Dyck, who's someone who Rembrandt was really looking at and responding to, someone who paints very glamorous, very flattering portraits. And some of that swagger that you see in Rembrandt really comes from studying Van Dyck, but he's also opposing this honesty, this lack of flattery to Van Dyck. Mm-hmm. And then since I work at the Met and I worked at the Frick beforehand, I was responsible for wonderful Rembrandts. And that has a lot to do with the Dutch history of New York, that we used to be a Dutch colony, New Amsterdam. There's always been a lot of pride and interest in that Dutch heritage, particularly on the part of wealthy collectors in 19th century New York. When they were founding museums here, they wanted to have great paintings. And for them, a great old master painting was a Rembrandt. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have this very rich collection that has been built continuously for 150 years now, that I'm very grateful to get to take care of.
Well, I guess my last question would be for the both of you. What's next? What are you working on, Adam, first? And then Oeke, what are you working on?
Well, I have a show that's still up, as you mentioned, which is a kind of new presentation of that collection of Dutch paintings at the Met. And that will run actually through 2022, I believe. So there's lots of time for everyone to get to see that, I hope. And in fall of 2022, I'll open an exhibition about the Tudor monarchs. So moving back into the 16th century and across the English Channel to think about royal patronage and collecting in that period.
Fantastic. And Oeke, anything for you?
Yeah, well, you will not be surprised, but since the Night Watch is being restored, and they asked me to make a film on this restoration, which will take a couple of years. So I'm happy to be off the street. I'm back to the Rijksmuseum again.
Fantastic. Well, good luck on that, and congratulations again on such a wonderful film. Thank you guys both so very much for being with us today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
I'd also like to thank Strand Releasing, especially Marcus Hugh and Carly Hildebrandt, and everyone on the Film Forum staff who helped put this event together. If you have yet to see my Rembrandt, please consider renting it on our virtual cinema platform at filmforum.org. We are proud to present a dynamic selection of premieres, including documentaries, world cinema, and American independence, as well as restored classics. Finally, please stay connected to us through our email newsletter and our social media handle Film Forum NYC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will keep you up to date with additions to our virtual cinema roster and upcoming virtual events. Thank you all for being with us today. And again, stay healthy and happy. Good afternoon.